Test, 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 test.
Morning. We're going to get started. If Ms. Malo could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Good morning, everyone. It is great to see everyone here after the last couple weeks of having 2 hurricanes come in our area. And if you had any loss during the storms, my prayers are with you, and I am very sorry for any losses that you may have sustained during this time period. We do have consent items that are on the agenda. May I get a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we will get to our action items. We will start with the approval of the budget amendment for a Learning Empowered Triangle Capital Project by Ms. Houghton.
In our last capital RFA, the board approved a $200,000 grant to Learning Empowered Triangle's Baby House, and the project experienced multiple delays, some of which to some of us might have been more foreseeable, some not, everything from zoning to permitting and on and on. So the last news we have is that Learning Empowered submitted the permit responses back to the city in early September, and of course everything has been pretty insane since then. They received approval for everything except the fire sprinkler. And those of you who've done this know that those are 2 different paths, and those things take longer. So as a result, Learning Empowered is requesting that we, because they were not able to complete the project in 2024, that we do a budget amendment for fiscal year 25 so that they can complete that project in fiscal year 25. Any questions?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it has passed. Next, we'll go to our presentations. The hurricane relief efforts by Ms. Houghton. You have the floor.
We thought you might like to know what JWB did through 2 storms, pre, during, and post. As we all know, the visible signs of the hurricanes and the destruction and devastation that came with them are greatly impacting our community. Many of us had damage ourselves. We were lucky, did not, but our neighborhood is stacked with debris. So everywhere we turn in our community, we're seeing that. Homes that have been significantly affected include that of your chair, whose home was significantly flooded. 4 of our employees who cannot live in their homes. Neighborhoods are littered. Streets are beginning to be passable, but we've all struggled and still have some 4-way stops. Schools just reopened, which is an incredible blessing, and we gave Kevin Hendrick a pass on attending this morning, although he was trying to. But we also know, as the Juvenile Welfare Board, that the emotional and traumatic sorts of impacts are going to last a lot longer for our families and kids. So we've been saying from the beginning, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So as we continue to respond, we're staying focused on our role in the community and what we should be doing. So our first focus, of course, was on our own staff, how they were after each hurricane. We used our telephone tree, probably somewhat a text tree now, to contact and be in touch with every one of our employees, asking them what they needed, how we could help. And I would tell you that the JWB employees rallied around Post-Helene, those first 3 families, everything from what's called a kudo board, but it's a way to send good wishes and money to someone. We use it for baby showers, et cetera. So each of those folks have received that tangible financial support, along with lunches being brought over and phone check-ins and offers of any other help. So we really wrapped our arms around our own employees, as have many of you. We certainly focused on our own business continuity, and I think I'll touch on that in a bit. We also began checking in with all of our agencies to see how they work, what they needed, what we could do, and you'll hear a little bit more about that. And then we always listen into the county's Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, calls daily, as well as when they have public information officer calls. April sits in on those. Human needs, human services calls, and VOAD, volunteers calls, so that we hear and know what we might do and what information we might share. So we have also been working to listening to those needs, filling in the needs that weren't happening quickly with either county, state, or federal support. Sometimes because they had other priorities that were appropriate for them. So I don't say that negatively, but we've tried to just be assistive and not be in the way. So Linda and Karen are going to pop in on pieces of this. This was an all hands on deck to the extent people could be. These folks worked through at least 2 weekends and into the night to do a lot of the things that they're going to talk about.
Alrighty, as Beth mentioned, in advance of both of the hurricanes, we did activate our updated disaster plan. And our first concern, of course, is our staff, our employees, and the safety of them and their families. So for Hurricane Helene, we did close the JWB offices for September 26th and September 27th, and did learn that all of our employees themselves and their families were safe, but 3 did have significant flood damage. And then for Hurricane Milton, right on the backs, we closed our offices from October 7th through October 11th, and did have one more employee have flooding in her home, and it's not habitable at this time. But like Beth mentioned, our staff rallies around each other, and we did support through either individual gift cards or through the kudo boards, or just, I delivered lunch one day to two of our staff, and it was food. They were ripping out drywall, and they just wanted food. So we've all reached out in different ways, and it's been very meaningful, I think, to the staff that have really, really suffered.
Let's see, relative to our disaster recovery plan and our own JWB continuation of operations, all of our core information systems are either in the cloud or they're backed up to BTS, the county's IT component. We completed payrolls throughout, and people were doing that from wherever they were, and made payments to all but a few of our agencies. So we had our Stacy Gill, our program finance manager, and Linda Latour, our accounting manager, and Lily Plutnoff, who manages AP, doing this Sunday night and Monday as they were preparing their own families for Milton. But we wanted to get that support where it needed to be. There has been a lot of attention to reducing the stress on our agencies as well, who personally and programmatically are also struggling. So our disaster plan worked. We followed it, and because we didn't have to spend a lot of time on that, because all of our employees are equipped to work from wherever they are. We were able to really then move to some of the next steps of supporting our community. JWB is not an emergency response organization. We have 75-ish employees, so we don't have an army. Many of those were displaced or other places, but we did quickly respond and stepped up to support our employees, our agencies, and other frontline organizations. As I said, we listened into all the county calls, and we were in touch regularly with all of our funded agencies.
Good morning. So we have been in contact with all 98 programs that we fund. And as you can imagine, with 98 programs that we fund, the amount of staff, buildings, sites that have been impacted. Through the first storm, we had only a few of our programs report serious damage. This next storm, we are still assessing, and we're getting information in daily on the status of programs. So some may have had impact in their on their properties in some way, shape, or form. We have a rolling, we see some programs are rolling their openings out this week as they're able to, especially as depending on how many staff they had that were impacted. So we are monitoring that very closely and supporting our programs in that way. Following both storms, we emailed out communication to our funded programs, reminding them that in their contract, we will fund agencies for up to 60 days should an emergency happen. And we were getting emails of concern, how are they going to be able to pay their employees? So it was a nice reminder for all the agencies and providers that that was going to be able to happen. And then if beyond 60 days was needed, we would be reviewing that with Beth, our CEO. In anticipation of the stress and the burdens that both of these storms have caused, we immediately thought through what submission delays we could grant to reduce the stress and workload for our providers. And so we communicated to our provider agencies extended deadlines for fiscal year 24, because of course we're ending one fiscal year and beginning another one. So we extended deadlines as we could for reimbursements, for participant data submissions, other contractual submittals, and postponed the proposal submission date for the capital RFA funding opportunity, which I know was extremely important. Linda?
So after Helene, we quickly ramped up our family services initiative to be able to provide more emergent navigation and more nimble assistance for such basic needs as personal hygiene, infant supplies, food, cleaning supplies. We put in a plan to add additional FSI capacity in anticipation of increased calls. And this plan was put on hold when Milton arrived. So we restarted this week, we've got the staff trained, and we also quickly sorted out how we would handle some unusual circumstances and questions that arise in a very unusual situation. So we are poised and ready to address and handle those additional calls. We also have coordinated with PEMS to stand up a resource center at their Palmway location. All sorts of resources and supplies for families that need them. Again, that was scheduled to set up 2 weeks ago, we paused it. PEMS didn't have power until yesterday, but we're hoping to get that up. If not tomorrow, then certainly Monday. JWB staff, we had to figure out how to stage it. We ordered water, infant supplies, hygiene products, cleaning supplies, and then we partnered with the St. Pete Free Clinic to be able to deliver kid-friendly, shelf-stable meals. So it's all either here or with St. Pete Free Clinic, ready to be dropped to PEMS as soon as they say thumbs up. I think they're getting 1 drop of food today, and then we'll be ready to go with their staff and potentially our FSI staff helping as well. It's a real community, and the Gulf Coast is another navigation partner. They're going to assist as well. So it's really bringing everybody together.
Another effort that we've been involved with is due to the damage at Madeira Beach Fundamental School, which serves kindergarteners through 8th graders. The students have been, well, the elementary students, the K through 5, have been moved to Walsingham Elementary for a split schedule. The 6th through 8th graders have been moved to Osceola Fundamental High School for a split schedule. And this split schedule starts school day after 11:30. So parents and kids need programming, usually starting at 6:30 in the morning. So the Y of Greater St. Pete has stepped up. They had a site location at their Broadmoor area, and they are opening a program there. JWB is going to be able to fund those children from 6:30 until 11:30 or so when they get bused by the school district to their respective locations. And this effort took quite a few people, the school district, the MCA of Greater St. Pete, our Pinellas County Licensing Board, as well as our Early Learning Coalition. And everyone came together to make this as seamless for parents with this transition as possible so that they don't have to worry about yet one more thing and that their kids will be cared for the entire day. And those kids that are in the elementary school who need aftercare will be able to attend our club as well. So we will be coming to the board at some point soon with the dollar amount that we will be funding this program, estimating currently between $75,000 and $125,000. There's over 200 kids that have registered and will be attending. And so as soon as we have those dollar figures more solid, we will be coming to you all.
She is humble. I want to point out that Karen pulled all those parties together very quickly, pre-Milton, and because we have strong relationships and fund the licensing board and ELC, and a wonderful relationship with the school system and funding to the YMCA St. Petersburg, Karen was able to sort of brainstorm that whole group to get through any barrier, any concern they had, so that all of this could quickly happen. That can't be understated. We've seen so much through these storms. You know, every silo and every party is really trying to do their best, but they're used to their set of rules and what they can do and how they can do it. And often we've been able to say, but what if, and could you instead, and surely in this circumstance we could make an exception and that sort of thing so that we could get to care for these 200 kids before school, for instance.
We also received a call from Department of Children and Family Services. I'll say it was around noon on this day, and calling, can JWB pick up?
Post-Helene.
Yeah, post-Helene, I'm sorry, the first storm. We get a call around noon, can you come and pick up supplies so that we can keep them in Pinellas County? Supplies like water, diapers, cleaning supplies, and as examples. And so our staff, and I'm going to call them out, Danielle Hintz and Victor Sino, stepped up, and within 2 hours, we're at the site picking up all the supplies in our JWB van and bringing them to the St. Pete Free Clinic so that we were able to keep those in Pinellas County for Pinellas County families. And then Beth, I think
Thank
you
you.
go back.
So after DCF, we're still talking Helene, post-Helene, after DCF closed its community outreach location that was at the Crosswinds area in West St. Pete, it was open maybe 2 days, maybe another, I don't know, but it closed while there was still a lot of need. And those decisions are made wherever they're made. There was very little emergency availability in Pinellas County for infant needs. So everything from diapers, wipes, formula, a lot of car seats were ruined when cars were flooded. So JWB immediately started calling the folks that we thought could respond and seeing whether we could help support them or connect them. We coordinated an immediate response with our partner, the Free Clinic, who may have distributions every day of the week and can get diapers, et cetera, if they have funding for it, but they typically don't have funding for it. So we backed them up with that and said, we'll add $50,000 to your contract for those infant needs, as well as cleaning supplies. so that they could distribute them among their 3 food distribution sites. We also were in contact with, it struck me, who can buy diapers in bulk. Baycare and All Children's were the first likely source. They've got large procurement and bulk buying possibilities, the ability to warehouse, the ability to distribute. So we were in touch with both of them to see what they could do, just in the purchasing part, if nothing else. So both of them stepped up and were, as Helene, as we were in the post-Helene period, we're ordering all of those things. We were also hearing about car seats, and that's, you don't just distribute car seats. You've got to have the right car seat for the right kid, and you've got to instruct the parent how to install it and install it right. So both All Children's and Baycare already do that. They've got trained people. They know how to do those distributions. So we prompted them to see where they could do that out in the community. And in All Children's situation, of course, they cover 17 counties, so they had spent down funds for that purpose. We backed them up with $50,000 for those things. So for car seats, infant formula, diapers, et cetera, they can use for that purpose. And I think they have a distribution today of those things. And Baycare has been wonderful and had funds that they put aside for hurricane relief and response for the community, and this fit right into that. So all that was stood up, and then Milton came, and it's being re-stood up now.
We also heard that families in shelters and those who had gone to hotels were not equipped with the pack and play or a safe place for babies to sleep. And as you know, that triggers some of our staff. So April Pucciolo and Becky Albert, working directly with the Healthy Start Coalition, drove and picked up the pack and plays from Healthy Start and then drove them to various shelters and hotels and dropped them off so families could have a place for their babies to sleep. Because we certainly don't want to have any sleep-related suffocation deaths in this tragic time.
So following Hurricane Milton, we resumed every one of those efforts you just heard about that had to pause, and we continued to coordinate infant needs and so on, as I mentioned before.
And we have and will continue to help coordinate and provide volunteers for the Hope Florida bus pop-up sites, including one that we had this past Sunday and Monday at Tangerine Plaza in St. Petersburg, where Beth was interviewed by Spectrum Bay News 9. Our key role was to advocate for Pinellas sites and to identify good distribution sites and contact owners through our own connections, securing permission and connecting DCF with them. This accelerated the opening of Hope Florida distribution site at Tangerine Plaza, owned by the city of St. Pete, and that occurred last Sunday and Monday, and there are some pictures from it. The site distributed food, water, diapers, hygiene items, and more to over 2,000 individuals. And we had our volunteers, myself, Yaritas Garcia, Becca Teeter, and Beth, that were there all day on Sunday.
And Yaritas' husband.
And yes, her husband, who's just amazing. And then yesterday and today at Pinellas Park Performing Arts Center, the bus is there. Yaritas is there. I'm sure her husband is there with her today. And they served, we know, over 1,000 families yesterday. So I know that they will be there until supplies run out. We are trying to, if we can, secure a North County location as well. So stay tuned as we navigate that.
And that Pinellas Park location was identified and committed and all the rest due to the work that our staff did in advance of DCF so that we could kind of hand that to them on a platter. Here's a place, we know it's well located, we know the flow for drive-through is good. Here's the name of the person, the cell phone of the person you need to talk to so that you can make arrangements. I have no doubt that we had more Hope Florida, paren DCF, support in the county because we were able to do those things and make it very easy for them. And also give them local knowledge about where the best locations were. We've found sometimes that the state's citing of these things are not necessarily as responsive to the county as they ought to be.
And then JWB staff have also taken initiative to help coordinate response efforts for over the 500 residents, of which there are over 100 children displaced from their homes at the Standard apartment complex due to the flash flooding from Milton. And I know we had a lot of activity going on there. We have
It's a much longer story.
Yeah, there's two of our agencies have been out there every day. Their staff, our Hispanic Outreach Center, as well as Maddie Williams Neighborhood Family Center, helping provide support, transportation, and I know there's a lot more.
Coordination of community response, really creating the best holistic presence at that site that could be. We're really proud of them, and we, of course, supported them to do that.
We're also partnering with the St. Pete Free Clinic on a drive-through mobile food pantry event, much like we had over the summer. So it will occur here at JWB on Saturday, October 26th from 8:30 to 11:30 in the JWB parking lot. Families are going to be able to receive a trunk load of free meats, dairy, fresh produce, and more. And if any of the board members would like to volunteer, you may contact JWB Board Clerk Olivia Bell or simply show up, and we will have a JWB polo shirt for you if you don't already have one. And I know for many of you who attended over the summer, you know how helpful this was for our community.
Because we're also thinking, a lot of this emergency response will then drift away, and families will have power back, have refrigerators, still need food, they lost wages over this time period. They had extra expenses in evacuation, et cetera. So we're also looking to sort of the next steps. So thinking a little bit, midterm and potential longer term. First, let me give a serious shout out to for all of these post-recovery and relief efforts. Many of your JWB staff worked tirelessly over the time periods that they had administrative leave because of the hurricane, but they worked anyway. And they were working weekends and days and nights. Includes Karen Bogus, Linda Leedy, Laura Peel, our IT and facilities, our CIO, Becca Teeter, Becky Albert, it's back over there, I think, Janine Avoli, who runs our FSI program, Danielle Hintz, Yaridis Garcia, Victor Sino, and all the members of our communication staff. These folks worked all the way through evacuations, weekends, et cetera. Many of our children and families are going to experience both immediate and longer-term dislocation. We don't know, but here we're pondering the possibilities. Many families may move out of the county temporarily or permanently, either because they've lost homes or jobs. Most of the hospitality jobs on the beaches are not there. Those without insurance may not have the resources to rebuild, particularly up to current required standards. Depending on federal, state, and local government support and how long that lasts, many of our families will need continuing support, at least navigation and direction in getting back up to speed in their lives. Many of our funded agencies, due to uninsured facility damage or loss of employees, may struggle to operate and survive. We're supporting and checking in with them right this moment, but as you all know in your own life, things sometimes hit waves later down the road as everybody tries to regroup and get back to normal. In addition, in the wake of all of this dislocation and in some cases direct trauma, kids and their parents sheltering in an attic through the night, as floodwaters rose, children and their families are going to be experiencing significant stress and anxiety, which is already on top of a children's mental health crisis. So we can expect those needs and those issues, behaviors in school and in preschool aftercare to increase. One would expect, and we saw in COVID, we can expect domestic violence and child abuse to increase. May not all happen right now, but it's pretty predictable, and we ought to be anticipating that possibility. So given our urgent and extended focus on post-hurricane recovery efforts, all these deadlines that Karen talked about that we generously pushed out for our agencies will then double up the work for our own staff when those things start coming in and compressed timelines. We're pausing our strategic planning process for at least 6 months. We'll reevaluate in January, February, maybe a year. It just didn't make a lot of sense to have a foresight consultant come in 2 weeks to talk about future when we're not really quite sure what our current is. We think we'll know more in some number of months. We don't want to lose momentum, but at the same time, the attention and sort of brain space we all have around those future issues will be better if we give it a little bit of a weight. Because almost all of our functions can be performed remotely, our own work can continue uninterrupted from both a facility and an IT perspective. Our building did not flood. I think only had some minor leaks within it. But as soon as we got power back and internet was dependable, which are pretty big ifs, and that took a while, the building was absolutely ready to go. And so we've, even for employees who typically work remotely, if they didn't have power, air conditioning, internet, et cetera, they were able to come here. So, and during the times that this building wasn't open, SPC locked it down for a period of time, and there was no power. Our employees were able to work from wherever they were if they had power and if they had internet. We were fortunate that we only had a small number of employees who received damages that interrupted their ability to work. For them, it's 100% for each of them. So I don't mean to take that lightly, but in terms of business continuation, we've all worked to figure out who to fill in and back up those folks so that things continue to happen. We're probably going to work on that in our ongoing planning as we look at making our disaster plan even better. But all of that happened just as it should. As we think about the future, if we were to have had the worst case, a Cat 3 to 5 hitting just north of us, filling up the bay, et cetera, we might well have had more employees impacted. And that probably is our greatest future hurricane risk, is our people, because that really is what makes JWB, is our people. There could be, depending on what jobs reemerge and who stays in Pinellas County and who might leave. There might be demographic changes to the county. We may need to be more nimble in figuring out where kids are, which services need more, which services need less. But those things will emerge over time. We can't know, but we're looking and listening for that. And so as we look to our fiscal year 25 budget, but then particularly our fiscal year 26 budget, we may be looking at very different circumstances. So our fiscal year 25 budget that you have all approved, and thank you so much for all being here for the trim hearings and the board meeting. It was a Herculean effort on your part, and I appreciate it. All of that was done without the knowledge of Helene and Milton. So you can probably expect that we're going to come back and talk to you about potential changes in that budget as we go along. And you have always been amenable to well thought out and reasonable requests. Property values, which affect our revenues, and the evaluation date of 1/1/25 that will affect fiscal year 26 revenues, are likely to be significantly lower. It's, from what we understand, and we're doing a little bit more research on it as we speak, communities that have been in Florida that have been significantly impacted by hurricanes saw a dip, but then often saw an increase after that. Lee County is, we think, a reasonable, it provides reasonable guidance on that. So, you know, we're not gloom and doom, but we know we're going to have to pay attention to it. And we also know that for the property appraiser who makes these determinations as of January 1st every year, I'm guessing they're not used to or staffed to do the wholesale reevaluation of all of these properties. That's not what they do every January 1st. They look at comparable sales around properties. They obviously update values based on sales and construction and so on. But you've got, you know, innumerable numbers of homes completely destroyed or significantly impacted that may have valuation changes, or that the property owners will, you know, will appeal and look for property valuation decreases. So where usually we start to get an indication of property values, taxable values in like the March timeframe, along with projections for the next 5 years, I think we have to be mindful that it's unlikely we're going to get those as early as we typically do, and or they're going to be less reliable for understandable reasons. So the other issue for the current fiscal year is that we budget a collection rate of 97%. By law, we can't budget a percentage lower than 95%, but I think it's likely we're going to see a lower collection rate. Don't know that. We'll know a lot more by February or so. Most of those revenues come in between November and January, February, and that will affect our fiscal year 25 budget. So there are all those just considerable uncertainties that will emerge as we go along, and we'll take those in consideration and sort of keep you updated on what we know and think is relevant. Let's see, I don't think just to share with you commitments we've made during the storms to assist our community and assist our agencies in meeting community needs. Karen mentioned earlier the YMCA St. Pete standing up before school care at Walsingham. They were able to acquire the site without additional expenditure, but asked very early on, would we support the operating expenses of that center, as we do many others that they provide, and we said yes. The likely budget, and again, this was post-Helene, pre-Milton, was somewhere between $75,000 and $125,000 for staff, supplies, et cetera, from, they thought, opening last Monday through, you know, whenever Madeira Beach was going to get back online, which at that point they thought was about 3 months. that could have changed post-Milton. I don't know that. So, you know, we told them, you know, go forth, we'll back you up. And once they have a better idea of how long and how many kids and what they need, they'll be getting us a budget for that, and we will bring that to you. That will be over my spending authority. Our board policies, Colleen knows these better than I do, but our board policies do provide authority for me to purchase things during a time of urgent need, I think are the words in that particular section.
I think it says health, safety, and supporting community, and, you know, really covers the situation we're in.
Yeah. But at the same time, I want to be completely transparent with all of you so that you're aware, and if you want to redirect me, you know, you certainly can. The other two out-of-budget expenditures that we've committed, well, maybe three, that we've committed to were what I mentioned before, the $50,000 to St. Pete Free Clinic to buy infant needs, et cetera, for immediate distribution, and the $50,000 to Johns Hopkins All Children's for similar things, plus car seats. I do know, and we have told many of our agencies that if they have immediate needs that show up in front of them, they can use their budgeted participant expense line item for that purpose. And so as things flow through, we may find that we need to add to those budgets if LAPS won't cover it. LAPS, yeah, we don't know what LAPS is as of October 17th, but it likely would, you know, would cover that. Also, just so you're aware, we've been asked by a number of agencies if they could buy gift cards with JWB funds, with participant expense or whatever, because they're seeing people in front of them immediately post a lien, as well as who need to fill back up their refrigerators. Our policy says that gift cards are ineligible unless I make an exception. I was not comfortable making that exception. I understand the need, but that would not have been a small expenditure. It would have, any one of our agencies, every one of our agencies would have wanted the same thing for every one of their 98 programs. And that's a less than fully accountable way to assist families. So instead, what we've said is, you agencies can purchase those things and distribute them. Here is other information about where families can go, both for financially supporting getting those groceries themselves, as well as food distributions. We've encouraged everyone, and then to spread that word, to immediately file with FEMA. And FEMA will, if they approve you, which is another story, but if they approve you, will provide funding for things like groceries. We've also, as Linda mentioned, we've also stood up an emergent navigation component in FSI. It's not as easy as a gift card, but it provides for emergency groceries there, and we're supporting all of the food distribution sites that we always support throughout the entire county. Our neighborhood family centers, almost all of them distribute food, for instance. The St. Pete Free Clinic purchases food in bulk. Feeding Tampa Bay is the county's emergency connection for food. They have, I think, 10 counties to cover, but you know, they've been in on a spot basis distributing food at different places, just like DCF will be open 2 days or maybe 3. We find out about it that morning, and then they're gone. So it's really helpful, but families need an ongoing place they know they can go, like Oldsmar Cares, or, you know, or the Dream Center, or the Shepherd Center or the St. Pete Free Clinic, where there are folks there who are doing this every day, and they're supporting families every day. Do you have any questions of me about hurricane related? Yeah.
Madam Chair, sorry. First off, thank you all very much. I cannot tell you how appreciated your service is in this incredible time of need. And that's not just you all, but all of you and all of you that are not here or not able to be here. This is why, we're here, kind of the first line, last line of defense for our kids and our families. So I wanted to get a better idea of how we can be helpful, particularly from a budgeting on hurricane relief efforts. So we've identified the Walsingham need for out-of-school time care. You're saying it's going to be, you don't know exactly how much yet. Was maybe 75, maybe 150. Was that part of agenda item 3A that was deleted?
We did, in part because we didn't have anything very concrete for you to vote on.
What else would have been on
But
there?
I wanted to share that with you so
Sure.
that you'd know. I think at one point, we were working on the agenda through the storm as well. So at one point, we were thinking that those two $50,000 amounts needed to come before the board, but they don't, per policy. So a lot of the reason that was deleted was we realized it didn't need board approval.
That's great.
I want to make sure you all know, that this is not a permission for me to go rogue, and I
No, of course
will not.
I also don't want us holding up these kids getting the out-of-school time when they're on that split schedule. I mean, that's going to be extremely disruptive for them and their families. So I would be comfortable authorizing you to sign a contract with the YMCA of St. Petersburg because they're a trusted partner for that specific program, so long as you just provide us with the information at the next board meeting. Otherwise, I'd be happy to come here, any day of the week for a special board meeting to approve it, because I don't want that to be held up. And I hesitate to give you a not to exceed because it doesn't sound like you really know. But I
Right.
mean, use your judgment. I trust you, obviously, and I think we all do. So, I mean, that's I do not want to hold that up. I don't want them to be delayed 3 weeks when school's
Right.
already started.
And please know, because you all have said those kinds of things here at the board table before, and because we have policy that provides me that ability to do those things, I've acted in the way in which I think you've just directed
Sure.
me.
Is there anything else specific in terms of additional hurricane relief funding that we can provide, particularly for those kids at the Standard that go to Eisenhower, other kids that have been victims of flooding, have lost clothes, have lost shoes, don't have food, don't have power? Are those resources kind of there in place, or are we needing to augment those? And if so, how do we do that? How do we get a dollar amount that I can give you quickly to do that, so that the need is actually met when the need is existing, and it doesn't take 3 months and then all of a sudden
Right.
the need's not there anymore?
The Standard is a whole subject into itself, which I'm happy to address. It's an apartment complex in Clearwater that had significant flooding, and the residents have nowhere to go, and they have significant needs, but also significant response to those needs. If you wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and act as I think you would want me to, even if you don't. But if you wanted to authorize $500,000 as a hurricane response fund that I could, I could use up to my spending authority,
I'd
that
be
might,
fine with that.
does something like that
Yeah,
make
I'd be
sense
fine
to
with
you?
that. Yeah, I would be fine
And
with
then
that.
we'll be back together in November.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to to authorize our CEO, Beth Houghton, to provide immediate assistance through contracting, purchasing, and authorize her to spend up to $500,000 total on Hurricane Milton and Helene relief efforts with update to the board as reasonably available.
I'll second that motion. We'll both do.
We have a first and a second. Do we have any discussions before I ask for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? I just want to say, I want to piggyback off of what Mr. Unksa said. The report was very heartfelt, so thank you for the staff that left your homes in the midst of the storm to make sure that everybody else was okay. So thank you for everything that you've done for those people that are and were in need, and thank you for your continued efforts.
It's a team effort. You should be very proud of your JWB staff.
I also just wanted to thank everybody for everything that they've done, and I know we're always thinking about them, but I just wanted to put it out there that maybe we could pay a little extra attention to some of our grand families. I think that there's a lot of support coming out to foster families, but we all know how slowly some of that support comes through. I know after Helene, I'd spoken to several caregivers who lived out on the beach, and they are somewhere else. And, you know, it's certainly we can't replace the emotional cost of, you know, losing a home where your kiddo took their first steps, or, you know, you lost all of those little mementos that you had. But I think that often for children who are involved in the dependency system, the help comes slower, only because of the volume, you know, because of how many hands the help needs to pass through. So if we can support, you know, the relatives, the grand families, the non-relative caregivers who are, and, you know, by extension, the families who are helping those families by giving them someplace to live, or helping them get to school, replace clothing, replace items. I think that would be very much appreciated as well.
Thank you. Have we had any specific outreach to the grand families we know or have contact with, or do you know?
We've been in contact with our kinship program, but I think what you're speaking to, we will follow up. Also, we can follow up with the community. I mean, I know being out at some of these distribution sites, we are seeing caregivers there. So we will follow up on all of that.
Okay, because describe what our kinship program does.
Our kinship program works with both relative and non-relative caregivers to try to prevent children from entering into the child welfare system. They provide support in navigation, you know, meeting with the family, assessing their needs, working to connect them to resources in both in the community, but working with them on a weekly basis. They provide family support groups as well. We know that one of the big needs is legal assistance, respite care, child care. So the kinship program really works to connect the kinship families to all of those resources. And they work with them up to 6 months or longer if needed.
But we will circle back
Yes.
and see if they need some infill of more support or different support. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to thank Brian for quickly stepping up on that. He beat us all to it, I think, but that's great. And I think it's most important because this is the way we have excess funds, and this is the way they should be used. So, once again, thanks, Brian. The other is, I want to thank the staff for their heroic, it's not just being kind and nice, but your heroic efforts to quickly go and support while you're going through this just like everyone else is. So again, thank you so much. My last question really goes back to the strategic plan. And the strategic planning question is really understanding that it makes sense to push it back and to rethink. My question is really, have the consultants begun to build foundational information ready? And if so, can we see that information so we can kind of prepare ourselves? We know where they were, and we know where we are, and where we're headed, to some extent where we're headed. It'd be a great way for us in prep for when we do kick back on, that we have some basic foundational information ready so that we can move quickly into the next stage. Is that possible?
Yeah, actually, I've already initiated that, so good idea. So have talked both, the two prongs right now are our consultants, Mary Grace Duffy, working with our own Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez, who had already gone through a number of interviews with community members, maybe had done some focus groups, but some were still this month and needed to be canceled. So what I've asked them to do about a week ago, is to synthesize what they heard so far between them. What were the themes, what were the needs, so that we capture that, even though it was incomplete. And then when we start again, we'll have that to build on top of. We also will have all of the planning and project management kind of piece of how we were going to do this plan already done. We know who we wanted to interview. We knew who was going to do it. We had a timeline we can just plunk into whenever we restart. So we'll pick up, we began that last April and May. We'll pick up more, where we were in September. Relative to our foresight consultant, they were to come October 30th for a Flash Futures scenario planning, play like the world is a different place session. We have put them on hold, but they have done the research. They've done all the planning on who, what, how that can be restarted when we start things again. And I've asked them to summarize the first piece of work they did, which was an environmental scan and future, not Pinellas-based, but future-based themes that they would use to create the scenarios, for instance.
We, as a board, can we see that
Yes,
data?
as soon as,
absolutely.
absolutely.
To me, that would be very
As soon as
helpful.
I get both, that would be the purpose. As soon as I get both of those, maybe at the November meeting, if not December, we'll send that out in advance. They should both be written.
Good.
Brief, but written. And absolutely, you can all see that. And as I see it, as you all look at it and our executive team looks at it, it may point strongly to some interim things we ought to just do, as opposed to wait for a full strategic planning process. Needs that I would say I've observed that are significant and unmet in the county. There are just gaps within the children's mental health landscape. There are great providers doing lots of great work, but we really, to enhance, the end game, we need to stand up more primary pediatricians to be screening for common childhood mental health issues like anxiety, depression, ADD, already do a pretty good job of that, and to be support, and for us to provide support to them, for them to feel comfortable and competent in managing the low acuity kinds of cases there, so that we get to kids when they're 4 and 5 and 6 and not 16 when things are happening. So that's one thing we probably need to not just ramp up, but really ramp up as soon as possible. That takes money, but it also takes a lot of time and support, staff support. And so we may well be asking for another person to help do that. The other that we hear across the community from FSS, who does who cares for our foster kids, from others who don't have a place to go with kids who are screened for or strongly suspected to have autism, but there's a huge gap in the diagnosis piece. And without the diagnosis, they can't get the services that everybody already knows they probably need, and those are more available. Medicaid, for instance, pays for those, doesn't pay for the diagnostic component. So currently in Pinellas County, unless you have individual funding, you have private funding, All Children's has received some significant grants to be able to do that diagnostic work, but it's to the tune of $1 million a year, and they've got long waiting lists. Okay, so I'm seeing Kristen and Judge Moore nod. You want to add? You probably know more about this than I do.
To get the autism diagnosis, it takes almost like an act of Congress. And the wait list is very long, and we do have a bunch of kids in dependency and in the juvenile system with that diagnosis that you could say that you know that they have it, but they haven't been officially diagnosed. And so there is a significant gap between seeing the signs and actually getting the diagnosis so that you can get the help. So if we could do anything on the front end, that would be marvelous.
Because that's something I think, for instance, we could immediately begin working with the resource that does exist in the county, and that would be Johns Hopkins All Children's, to stand up more of that. So those are two pieces that I would hate to wait until we finish a strategic plan, but we don't currently have those budgeted or staffed.
And just to give everyone an idea, what I'm generally seeing in terms of a wait list at All Children's is somewhere between 6 and 10 months, which is an incredible amount of time, lost services, lost, ability to learn and stay in a daycare, and, oftentimes that'll lead to, a breakdown of placements, and the repercussions are far-reaching. So yeah, it is a very incredibly long time to wait for those diagnoses. And a private pay, you're probably talking about anywhere between, if we have a contracted partner, maybe like the $500 range per evaluation per child, upwards to $1,000 to $1,800, depending on what type of evaluation. And even those private pay often have anywhere from a 3-week to a 3-month waiting list. So we're spending a lot of time waiting.
And we're talking, in many cases, about 2- and 3-year-olds. Yes. For whom 6 months or 10 months is a really long time. And all the literature and all the folks who are expert in this area will say early intervention is hugely powerful. But if it's suspected at age 2 but not treated until age 3, that's a huge loss that will be permanent.
Just say that part of that funding, certainly there is going to be an uptick in Judge Moore's calendar, I suspect, and we see the results of when there isn't the intervention of 2 and 3, and so those consequences can be really severe. So particularly with domestic violence and juveniles, I think the support is going to be necessary, and you won't see those effects probably for a couple months. Mm-hmm. But
is there any way that we can take some of at least the initial evaluation that we can give to the parents for them to be able to help at least quickly say, wait a minute, there might be a problem, and we could add it into turbo babies and other components of that. Is there, can we get that information? Are we doing that already? I'm sorry.
Let me ask, Becky, can you address that? Why don't you go to the podium?
That's what I'm wondering. And then the second part of that is, as we talked, Beth, I mean, I know that the Elks Club has a national program that's working. Anytime you're ready, I can get us that meeting set up to go, with them wherever to, to see what they have and maybe, and I know they work with all children because many of
Yes.
the doctors are there, have gone to their fundraisers.
And that
have
may
gone
well be their current funding source. But
Could be.
but if we were to do anything, if you authorized us to do anything, we would first assess what's already there in the community and talk to everybody, that we could before we
Well, that's why I
decide
think-
what we should do.
That's why I think what we were talking about, getting the initial information from the strategic planning process. And then we need to take some interim steps. That could be, could be one of the ones that we need to address, immediately. And reallocate or begin to, add budget to do that.
Becky, is there anything one can do for a child sort of suspected of autism before a diagnosis?
Yeah, so we've been working on this. Good morning, everyone. Becky Albert, Director of Strategic Initiatives. We've been working on this for quite a while in the workforce design team. And some of the areas that we've identified is a train the trainer model for clinicians and non-clinicians. However, the current statute requires a developmental pediatrician or a licensed psychologist to sign off on the evaluation for autism. And so that is a barrier currently. So if we could advocate for other licensed professionals to be able to become trained and sign off on the evaluations, that may help reduce the bottleneck that we're experiencing. We've had data from our local pediatricians who are referring families for the evaluations, and on average, we're seeing a 6-month wait time or more. The cost of evaluation is, I would say, closer to the $1,200 on average. And often families who have the means are getting their children evaluated out of state because of the wait times here in Florida. So I think partnering with Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, who have experts that are willing to do a train the trainer model, that can also equip paraprofessionals, staff within early learning centers, and parents and caregivers to do some of the interventions, maybe even before they receive the diagnosis. That's something that we're looking at. So we're not waiting to get a diagnosis. It's not going to necessarily fix it completely, but yeah, it's a big problem here.
See, that's what I was asking for, is not necessarily to get to the diagnosis because you need a trained professional to do that. But I'm sure there are many parents out there who are unaware of what is it that they're seeing, and is there a way that we can give them some information, signs, things to look for just in case, that they're
Yes.
seeing this, to be able to, to be able to at least get on the waiting list at that point.
Yeah, and I also just want to add, in my opinion, this is somewhat of an onion, and when you start to peel back the layers, staffing at our local centers, if we want to do something like this, I think it would require additional staff within our centers to support this, because you have to get people that want to come to trainings or don't feel so burdened by learning something more to do, when often staff who are in our centers are somewhat struggling themselves to make ends meet. So I just think it's looking at a much bigger picture than, because every time we want to train, which it will help them in their career and at home, but it's another thing to their plate.
And again, that's part of the reason for the strategic plan, because of the fact that we don't have the data or information that says this is this size, or it's this size, or it's even bigger. We have indications, I think, that says we're missing something, and we're not seeing it, we're not seeing the whole picture. So it's so important for us to be able to gather more information around it, to understand it, and understand it early enough so we can do something about it. At the 6, 10-year-old and over, we're reacting to something that's already in play. I do have a nephew's son who was able in New York to be able to, they're working through it, but it's not an easy thing to do. And it's going to take him time over time to become more and more integrated into the community. He may be a rocket science in the future. I don't know. Elon Musk was able to do it. But, I think there's the missing links. These are the missing links that we have to get ahead of. And so it's so important that we get this data and we really start to really understand and see what others are doing and see what it is and how important it would be to add to our budget going forward in the future, with the assumption that it really is as big as we all fear it is.
Yeah, I tell you, from a JWB perspective, in making those things happen, we're bottlenecked because we only have one Becky Albert. We have an open position for someone to work with Becky on mental health, but we have 2 people who are supporting community efforts as well as the Evra Health, mental health component, and the North Pinellas, the Children's Medical Center. Palm Harbor. Yeah, in Palm Harbor. North Pinellas Children's Medical Center,
Correct.
yeah, in Palm Harbor. That takes a huge amount of work to get those up. I would tell you all indications are that is a significant need relative to autism, and understanding the needs and figuring that out, as well as the Children's Mental Health Initiative. Adding a person on JWB staff would be exceedingly helpful to do that. We have one open position, but when they were filled, they were both pedaling fast.
Okay, but so what I'm hearing is we're having difficulty in finding the next Becky, or the comparable Becky, is that
Well,
it or no?
what I'm saying is a staff of 2 can't do everything we
Yeah,
just
no, I
talked
understand
about.
that. But we're down to 1 right now.
We're down to 1 right now. And I'm not sure the status of recruitment kind of slowed down the last few weeks, but I think people are findable for that kind of position. Largely because people with great background in children's mental health who are just burned out at frontline service, but real capable, this is a really good position for somebody like that. I'm going to see nods of heads that kind of give me some flexibility on maybe adding that resource, adding an additional resource.
We need a motion to do that?
Well,
It'd be
I
great.
mean, wouldn't it be prudent to fill the open position first?
We would.
And then
We
look
would.
for the
And if
second
we'll
position?
we'll come back.
Yeah, I think it would be prudent
Sure.
to fill the open position
Right.
first.
Sometimes when you
Because
put,
sometimes those teams, you want to
Yes.
see who you have on
Yeah.
that team, because then those personalities.
right. But I would also
can
say
really be
sometimes you put it
dynamic.
out there for hiring and you do identify 2 people within that same cycle, so.
I guess my comment is not, I would hope that we'd do the first one, and we'd get the next person in to help Becky because she's overwhelmed. I think that it would make sense to me to be looking for 2. And then move forward with that. We may find 2 in a hurry. We may find 1, and then we're gonna continue to look for the second. I'd rather not have to go through multiple steps to do that. I would rather us say, okay, we'll have 2 open positions, and then work to fill 1 and then the other. So if I would make a motion to do just that.
And we'll come back in November and give you a dollar amount.
Right. I think that would be fair.
So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Don't have a second.
I just want to explain my reasoning for not seconding it. I'm very unclear about whether us hiring more people is going to make any difference on the issue, which seems to be a statutory systemic problem. It seems to be a provider problem, statutory definition problem, and an overall system problem of how to get the children evaluated and diagnosed. I'm not quite sure how us hiring 3 versus 2 is going to make an immediate impact on that. If I had more information that demonstrated that it would, I would be all for it. I just don't feel like I have that information at this particular moment in time.
The only thing I would say is let's not confuse the fact of what we're looking for, unless I'm confused. Autism's one piece of this.
Correct.
There's a much broader mental health issue
Even
to
if we
deal with.
completely put that to the
Right.
side.
So it's just one of the part of it. I'm looking at it from a more broad perspective in mental health in general. And we have one person, we're trying to get a second. A third, I believe, would be valuable, not knowing the time frame at which to do that. So I'm not making it specific to autism, I'm saying mental health in general.
And to stand up more primary care mental health services. That would be the primary thing
So
that
would
these 3
that
people
change
would
your
be
mind?
doing.
Not right now. It's just
That's
bring
fine.
back more information.
Sure,
Okay.
and we can come back in November with more info and we'll know more. That's fine.
All the while continuing to find the person that
Absolutely, we have the one open position and we'll keep working on it. Becky, is there anything else that either we or someone else already does or we can do to help parents who suspect but are not diagnosed?
I just want to add that we are working with the Center for Autism and Other Related Disabilities. It's at the University of South Florida, CARD. They're at the table too. So we have the right, I would say, clinical staff at the table to be able to articulate what the gaps are. But really the component that Mr. McCurrick is talking about, how we're able to teach the skills and give parents, caregivers, paraprofessionals the applicable strategies that they can use with the children when they're interacting with them is
Doesn't really exist?
Yeah, and I know that Hillsborough has been doing some work in the schools. We have a training that we were getting ready to roll out. But like I said, again, that takes our partners, the capacity within their learning center to be able to get someone trained. And it's not just someone, because there's multiple people working with the children. It's, so it's a phased approach. But we need people to be willing to do that. And right now, we just with the care coordination too, you often hear it's one more thing that we're asking their staff to do because they're already overwhelmed and burdened by the requirements from licensing or,
Yeah, again, my concern is more on parents with their lack of knowledge and understanding of any of this, being actually afraid almost to acknowledge that their child may have this problem.
well,
I mean,
and I
they're
would,
all, and I've seen that across the board,
sure.
where they just, they won't admit that their child is going through this, but if they had more information, potentially they would be more open to do that.
Right.
And so that's, once we get into the diagnostic pieces and we get it into those things, most people are afraid to go to doctors in the first place. So I think they'll shying away. But if a parent has at least more information about what the signs are and what could be, hopefully that would maybe trigger to get in the waiting list, unfortunately for today. But at least to get into the waiting list, which would then help everyone get a better understanding of the size of this problem.
So some of that is happening within our home visiting programs, for example. Within our pediatric practices, we use the ages and stages questionnaire to determine whether a child is, meeting their developmental age-appropriate milestones. There are indicators. And so that at times leads to whether the parent's identifying it or the teacher or, you know, somebody else to get a referral, and then it's the gap. So we're trying to back it up and do the prevention on if there is a potential delay. Here are some, like with turbo babies, there are very specific activities that you can do with your child. So there is some of it, but again, it's, you know, we've just kind of come out the gate with it. There's a lot more untapped areas that need some support.
We'll do some internal brainstorming, working, thinking through all the implications, and if needed for support, we'll come back to the board in November, December. Does that sound okay? But a lot of great input from each of you and what you see in different places, which is really appreciated.
Well, that is a perfect segue, although we were already there for the FY25 strategic plan
Actually, we've
update.
got a review of the program monitoring
Oh,
report. It's a
look,
little
my
hard to read
glasses, I
this
don't have my
agenda.
glasses on,
Yeah.
yes.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay. Your house okay?
Good morning again, Karen Bogus, Chief Program Officer, and I'm going to be talking about our program monitoring reports. Before I get into that, I feel like I would be remiss without saying thank you to our JWB-funded agencies who continue to step up and show up for our community in many ways when we have to reach out and make a phone call and say, could you, would you? The answer is always, we'll figure out a way. So I just want to say thank you to all of them and our collaborating partners. So it feels like a long time ago, but last month at our board meeting, each of you received a binder that includes all the fiscal year 23 program monitoring reports. So JWB staff, and it includes our program consultants, it includes our evaluators and our financial analysts, go out and monitor the agencies and the programs on a regular basis. And the report, you can move to the next slide. And the report that you see is a condensed version of all that work that happens during the year. So I just wanted to review with you. This is one sample of one report that you received. So what we'll see is that the program name and the agency name are on the top. The background you'll see here for this report, we indicate whether participants are coming from North, Mid, or South County. In this example of an early learning center, oftentimes families may be living in one part of the county but working in another part. And so sometimes we will see a North County family that is attending a South County Early Learning Center. You'll see the program description, a very brief program description. There's a lot more information that we have in their program methodologies. As we move on, when we look at how much, you're looking at the overall budget for that program. That includes both JWB funding and other funding that they receive. You'll see the JWB portion of that funding and then how much was spent in fiscal year 23. The reach, you're looking at how many participants were served. And we always have a target for how many are served. And so as you see, this program was able to serve 80% of that target. And there are some reasons why they were not able to meet that target. Then below that, you see the race and ethnicity of the program participants that are being served, as well as the sex, and also the Child Opportunity Index, which really tells us, are we serving families, and as we can see here, in the very low or low areas of our community. When we move to the next side of the page, how well are we doing that? We in a very brief manner, we check off a box for financial monitoring, no findings, minor findings, or significant findings. And we provide some definitions on that. No findings during the financial monitoring or most recent audit that they have received. Minor findings are findings discovered by JWB finance staff during a financial monitoring visit. Examples include lack of supporting documentation, timeliness or accuracy of reimbursements, and those are some examples. Significant findings is there was a material weakness and or significant deficiency noted by external auditors. When we are looking at the program monitoring part of that, we either have performing well or receiving advanced technical assistance. So performing well, they're doing everything that they said that they were going to be doing. When we see receiving advanced technical assistance, sometimes the agency and the program may be experiencing some challenges. Maybe some environmental things change, so their reach for participants has changed, and they're needing to address that. Data quality, I would say this when we talk about our providers, that they're in the classrooms, teaching the children. Data, not necessarily entry, is always the top priority, but we continue to work with our agencies in terms of that. A lot of the agencies, the staff out there, they have hearts. Their primary goal is to serve families, and so we keep encouraging and training on data quality. So that's some examples. And then the next part is a paragraph, which we have worked with staff to really condense a year's worth of information into a paragraph, explaining the successes of the program and some of the challenges that a program may be having. In this case example, they continue to receive NACE accreditation, which is a requirement for our quality early learning centers, so that is always great to see. What we do see in this program is that, we see this trend across Pinellas County is as the school district opens more 4-year-old classrooms, BPK classrooms, families are making decisions. And look, if you have 3 kids and 2 of them are already attending the elementary school, and you want a one-stop, you're going to move your kid to that elementary school. So, we understand why families sometimes make those decisions. The last part of this is the performance measures. Is anyone better off? And as you see here, we have targets with each of our programs, and they met 3 out of the 4 key outcomes. So that is a brief summary of the reports. If you have any questions on any of the reports, please feel free to reach out to me. We have a lot more information that we collect on programs, but this helps give a brief snapshot.
Great job on those.
Yes.
Well, thank you to the staff who work really hard and, on getting these done. So thank you.
Next, now, we really will go into the FY25 strategic plan update.
Good morning, Linda Leedy, Chief Administrative Officer, Juvenile Welfare Board. And today I am going to give you an update on where we are through year 4 of our current strategic plan. Next slide. And the good news is we are right where we want to be. Year 4 on a 5-year plan, you should be 80% through. We are exactly 80% through. So happy on that. Fiscal year 24 had JWB and our funded agency on our toes. And you've heard us report on many of these program activities and outcomes at these board meetings throughout the year, and I'm just going to touch on a couple highlights. So Kristen, if you go to the next slide, you'll see each one of the result areas broken out, and they are all at or above target with the exception of school success, and I will get to that in just a minute. I'm just going to do a high-level highlight for each one of these areas, otherwise we would literally be here all morning because we've been very, very busy. So in early childhood development, this really goes to the discussion we had. Our 0 to 3 think tank and our Children's Mental Health Initiative Care Coordination Design Team have been meeting and talking about universal screenings and how the results can be shared across multiple disciplines to really link families and support the staff in those centers. For the Ages and Stages questionnaire, which, like Becky indicated, can be an indicator relative to early diagnosis, early signs for developmental delays and autism. We held 3 Grand Families events, South, Mid, and North County. with providers and resources targeted at those caregivers specifically, and meeting the needs for those caring with young ones. In our school readiness result area, you can see our target was 79 and our actual was 79%. We did open a new quality early learning center, yay. And JWB's workforce stabilization funding really started to bear fruit in fiscal year '24 as we started to see better retention in our centers of staff for the early learning centers. School success, you can see that our target was 81% and our actual was 70. Let me start with one of the positives was the book bus. We had 3 weeks with the bus. We targeted, our goal was 70 sites, and we did 76 sites. 4,375 kiddos got books, and 65 people volunteered to help on the bus. Now, where we sort of fell short in this is our literacy efforts are a bit stalled because the state instituted new standardized testing, which started last year, and then this year is year 2. But really, to have any trend data, you need 2 years of data. We don't have it yet, so we don't have anything yet to assess in that piece. But again, our workforce stabilization funding for our out-of-school time providers is really bearing fruit, and they're stabilizing. For our prevention of child abuse and neglect, Beth sort of referenced this earlier, and Karen, JWB convened, we're a good convener. We brought together Department of Children and Families, Family Support Services, Directions for Living, and JWB to talk about staffing, program eligibility, and limitations, as well as better communications pathways between those agencies. And in this fiscal year budget, we have allocated an FTE for a new Community Alliance Coordinator to continue those efforts and support the Community Alliance work. Our Fatherhood Initiative got off to a really great start this year with the hiring of Jerome Kennard, a new staff person, and that group distributed fatherhood information and resources, as well as incorporated surveys to track effectiveness of those resources. Our Children's Mental Health Initiative, in addition to continuing to support our pediatric practices, provided mental health resource guides and gratitude journals to community youth through so many avenues throughout the year. We aligned our messaging with the Pinellas County School System related to digital responsibility for lessons and activities, and also with Common Sense Media and Sandy Hook Promise to promote a community of connections and kindness. So many of the staff have this little badge, Start with Hello, which is what the schools use for opening up conversations and friendships. In our strengthening community result area, our target was 78%, and we're at 79%. We reactivated our JWB Youth Council, and they focused their time this year on teen food insecurity and food pantries within various schools. We've developed a QR code for families to go online and see a current list of food pantries, locations, and times, so they don't have to have a paper list that isn't accurate anymore, and they can use their phone, scan it, and have real time. We stood up 6 mobile food pantries this summer in partnership with the St. Pete Free Clinic, and we served 6,500 folks with food. And in our final result area, organizational capacity, our target was 83% and our actual was 87%. JWB's Equity Leadership Council hosted common grounds sessions, we call them, to foster staff engagement and appreciation for each other's strengths and backgrounds. And one of those sessions was on generations in the workplace, and another one was on regions. Where do you come from? Where do you call home? And they were really beneficial sessions for the staff that chose to participate. JWB also received recognition as one of Tampa Bay's best places to work this year, as well as was a gold level recipient for Mental Health America's Bell Seal Workplace Mental Health Certification. And finally, we implemented a new provider database, Flex. Our financial and contract modules are in and active. Our participant module is where it is targeted to be, getting the last pieces in to be able to operationalize that. And then the procurement module is scheduled for fiscal year '25. We are really pleased with the work that we've been able to accomplish this year and through the first 4 years of the strategic plan. And as we've been discussing, the first 2 weeks of fiscal year '25 have thrown us a bit of a curveball. So as Beth suggested, we might have to retool on a few things, but know that we are committed to serve our community. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Looks good.
Next, we will have our CEO report.
You've heard most of it, so this will be incredibly brief, but a nice highlight to leave on. In the midst of all of the hurricanes, we received notice that we have been again awarded by the GFOA the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the 5th year. There was no pressure on Robbie, who, by the way, wasn't here when that audit was complete. But in the interview process, we did kind of tell him, it's been 4 years, we're counting on you to keep this up. Yeah, exactly, and he did. But truly, and I know he would say this, the credit goes to Linda Latour and her entire accounting staff, who did the very hard work to make this happen. And I know worked tirelessly through all of last fall with some new accounting pronouncement, et cetera, to make sure that a very large document was accurate, consistent, and transparent. What the GFOA is really looking for is looking at transparency and ability to communicate, as well as compliance with general accepted accounting principles and so on. So we will, next meeting, we will bring the plaque and the staff who made this happen for you to applaud them. So join me in congratulating all of them. Lynn, raise your hand so everybody knows. Okay. And so I would just close on saying I hope you're as proud of the JWB staff as I am.
Yes, indeed. Next, we have informational items. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments on these items? Hearing none, we are at the open agenda. Any public comment? Okay, now we're going to go to our anniversaries and
And
milestones.
Mr. Bartlett asked me if I would do this for him. So Katie Dills, 1 year. Olivia Bell, 1 year. Helen Yu, 2 years. Kelly Roy, 2 years. Heather Davidson, 3 years. Beth Houghton, 5 years. Jamie Cole, 5 years. Karen Steiderman, I hope I pronounced that right. Streitman, 5 years. Desmond Newton, 8 years. Becky Albert, 14 years. And Karen Bogus, 19 years.
If there are no comments, questions, or concern, we will adjourn the meeting at this time.
Perfect. Thank you.